Back with part 2.
Let's say I took a tiny car, placed it next to a mid-sized sedan, then placed that sedan next to a sport utility vehicle, and then claimed this obviously showed a common line of descent between those varieties of car or vehicle.
Huge logic flaw. Cars don't self-reproduce, do they? They can't reproduce. This is a common argument that is totally flawed. Okay? So, under your concept, I can take this knife right here and say this was an early ancestor of this knife right here. Right? Because this is a more simpler version of this knife right here, right? You're an idiot. Okay? Trying to compare non-living, non-replicating matter, non-reproducing matter to living, reproducing matter, it's apples and oranges to the nth degree.
What would I have actually accomplished here?
Showing you that you're an idiot, which you do very well here.
Nothing other than telling you my theory in a more graphic manner.
But you know what? Thinking about it, I can do that. But not by going smaller car, bigger car. By starting and going back and looking at the early wheel. Okay, here's a wheel made out of stone. Then there's a wheel made out of wood. Then there's a cart. And then there's, a cart with 4 wheels. Then there's a cart that has a small engine in it. And then there's a cart that no longer is a cart, but is now the first automobile. And then you can keep going until you get to the Model T. And then you can keep going until you get into the cars of the 50s, and the 60s, and the 70s, and the 80s, and the 90s, and the 2000s, and the 2010s. And you can show how these things evolved from a simple concept to these really complex automobiles, which back in the very beginning, the earliest wheels were just round rocks. And the more complex vehicles now have GPSs and are hybrid, and they have rubber wheels, and they have not only do they have wheels, but they have computers inside. They're telling the wheels to to act a certain way to meet the conditions of the road. So yes, it evolved, but it evolved not because of natural means, which is exactly, you're trying to use an argument that has been debunked. But you know what? I can turn that argument on its head and come right back at you with it, and it just did.
This wouldn't be evidence because I arranged this order artificially myself based...
Not if you said this car was produced in 1910. And then you brought 11. And this car was produced in 1912. And this car was produced in 1913. That's what scientists do when they bring up fossils. They say, this fossil existed between this time and this time. And then this fossil existed between this time and this time. And we know this fossil and this fossil have some type of relationship because of how similar they are.
On my preconceptions. In this case, ones that are demonstrably false. Obviously, these various vehicles show similarity not because of common descent, but because of common design.
Here's the crux to the argument. Common design.
And the very same can be said to be true of life.
Yeah, this is called the intelligent design argument. I'm just going to take a break here. I'm going to take a drink. Just some nice cool water. Nothing spectacular. I'll comb my hair for a second. because I know it's going to get more stupid. You know, I'm just going to just relax here for a second because I just know it's going to get more stupid. Get that knot out of there. Yeah, it's the problem with having long hair. Yeah, common design. Let's let you keep going.
When similarities in body structure are touted as evidence for evolution, you've just received nothing but propaganda. It's scientific question-begging, and it's high time we stopped allowing it to pass.
How about we actually put your theories to the scientific test? Oh, that's right, you don't have any theories.
The supposed order of descent is not something we find naturally occurring in the fossil record for the
Bullshit.
most part.
Okay, we don't find it for the most part. That means we do find it in parts. Therefore, if we can find it in parts, that means that it is not all false. Does it? Okay? You can find, when you're looking at a wreckage of a plane, you don't find an entire plane. You find a bit here and a bit there and a bit here and a bit there. And then what you do is you then try to take the plane and put it back together in an order that makes the most sense. It's called how it's done.
Frequently, fossils are found all mixed together in inexplicable ways, and
Prove it.
fossils that are supposedly from millions of years later than or before than one another in the timeline of evolution are found in the same pits together.
Uh-huh. It's because, you know what? The Earth does not stand still. There are things where, you know what? We have these things called tectonic plates. And you know that they occasionally shift. Sometimes this way, sometimes they do this, sometimes they do this. Sometimes they just crunch together. And sometimes when they do this, the plates join. And all of a sudden, over time of it doing this, they get mixed up. That doesn't disprove shit, does it?
The fossil record consists mostly of marine life from top to bottom.
Yeah, because there was majority marine life since the beginning of time. Land mammals are very, very new. Okay, dinosaurs aren't that old. Okay, sorry to tell you, but there was fish on this planet for millions of years before the first one decided they wanted to make a stride on the land.
It's true that the higher you go in the rock strata, the more mammals you find.
Then there's the answer. You just said it. You just disproved your own dispelling. It's true. The higher you go up, the more mammals you find. Well, that is what they state as the fossil record, you moron.
But it's not true that the further down you go, the simpler the creatures get.
Bullshit.
They simply tend to be marine wildlife.
It's the kind thing again. Well, it swims, therefore it's all fish. It walks on land, therefore, and breathes, and has a it perches, so it's all bird.
But they are no simpler than organisms still found alive today.
It's because some of those organisms did survive. Because unlike a lot of other animals, they could survive. You're reading this with absolutely zero understanding of what you're talking about.